I knew in high school, Jim, that I was going to be doing something to serve. It was just innate. It was in me already. Um, if you went through my high school yearbook, you know, several pages at a time, good Lord, there's Mark Mumford again. There's Mark Mumford again. Well, he's in that too. He's in that too. I was very active all my life in organizations, as you'll see when you review the resume that I've given you. Um, I joined the fire department the minute I graduated high school because my mom and dad wanted me to finish high school before I did that. I think that there was some probably uncomfortable feelings about being a firefighter, but it was something I wanted to do. And so June came around of 1976. I graduated from high school and I went and joined the volunteer fire department. But I also had already, started serving in many other local organizations that you'll see mentioned, whether it was the Sacred Heart CYO Christian Youth Organization from my church, or whether it was the Ecology Club in high school, or the Canned Good Drive for the Needy in high school, things like that, or whether it was being the drum major of the King County High School Marching Band starting in 1974. I had an ability given to me by God to be able to accomplish a lot of things, and I always was successful in having good people that wanted to be a part of events and organizations that were accomplishing things and were go-getters and let's get it done. One of the greatest organizations I ever joined was in the late 1970s. I helped restart and recharter the Chestertown JCs. The JCs stood for Junior Chamber of Commerce, and they were the best leadership training organization in my entire life. They had Speak Up for public speaking. They had writing competitions, resume preparation competitions, and recognition for your community service projects. And you learned leadership by doing community service. Unfortunately, there is no local chapter. I would love to get a chapter started again. Jim, the problem is volunteerism. We see it all the way across the spectrum of our country. And I think a lot of that came with the advent of the iPhone and it taking up a lot of time of people's spare time that they could use in community service. It had to do with economics because many young people come out of school. They've got enormous debt load from student loans. And then they're trying to start their life. They've got to rent someplace to live. They've got to make a living, and trying to fit it all in. They have not been given that track of how to become successful through community service. Well, my biggest concern in Kent County is economic development. In order to have a well-diverse community, you've got to have a lot of options for employment. And I'm talking good, gainful employment. We have some great employers: Washington College, Dixon Corporation, Chester River Hospital Center. We lost over the years the Campbell Soup operation, and it was a very good operation for many decades. And every community is trying to compete for the same economic welfare. And unfortunately, we have not been able to give it away. In other words, tax incentives, property incentives for business to locate here and develop their companies and continue to grow and thrive. Part of that is location, but now I think you're going to slowly see some of that change over the next period of time of history. It's 2020, the advent of fiber optic internet. There will be more businesses that are able to locate wherever they want to and develop their company. I admire the fact that we're trying to develop high-speed fiber internet, because when I got there in 1990, there wasn't any connection. There wasn't even a PC. And it was time for us to get caught up. It was the 20th century, and we were still operating most of our systems that were established in the 1800s and forward, but it was all paper systems. We had one book, ledger book, that's just in the attic of the courthouse that was 4 foot wide and 2.5 foot deep. And you had to lay it on the counter and open it with 2 hands and enter the information all the way across these handwritten pages. And it's like there are personal computers and office computers that would make this much more efficient. The move in 1990 by the citizens of our state to move the clerk's offices out of the supervision under the comptroller of Maryland, which was Louis Goldstein, our most notorious servant in Maryland history. And they moved it over by constitutional amendment to the Maryland judiciary, which where the clerk's offices belonged all along, really. We got great service from Louis Goldstein, and he also oversaw the registers of wills, as well as the comptroller's office and many other entities of the state. And he always represented us very well. Anything we needed, we could call on him. You'd usually get a personal phone call back as a clerk of court from the comptroller himself. And he would handle and manage your question and get it resolved, your issue. But the Maryland judiciary was put into place by the constitutional amendment for guidance, support, and education. Thus evolved the Maryland Judicial College, which is at Annapolis. That's where we go for our training. The new clerk of court, Cherise Kennard, is currently in that training program, and she will earn her 4-year degree from the Institute of Court Management certification. It's been an intensive project for her. She's got 2 more couple of day sessions to do in Annapolis, and she will have completed all the requirements to earn her ICM certification. She has been with me in the office for 26 and a half years. She came in as a bookkeeper. She came off of the boning line at Campbell Soup. She had a pair of twins, and she was going to school at night at the Fleet Business School in Annapolis. And I saw right away in that first interview for a position that needed to be filled in my office due to her retirement, I saw the potential, and I said, wait a minute. This is a person that's going to learn as much as she can learn and do as good a job as she can do because of her ability to multitask and accomplish getting her Fleet Business School certification and raising a pair of twins and working a full-time job for the local Campbell Soup factory. We focused a lot on retirement community over the last 40 years or more. But with that comes an aged population, including myself. So I'm concerned about getting good, viable, strong businesses located in our region so that we can have a reasonable attraction for young couples, young families, young individuals, etc., to come into our community and establish a life here. We're sitting in a gorgeous garden of one of the most historic properties in Chestertown. The Johnstone family spent decades maintaining and having this beautiful garden available for people to be able to sit like this and enjoy. We have a lot of special pluses in Kent County, but I don't want Kent County to become a total retirement community. We've got to have a good balance of both in order to be successful. We have a very historic community founded in 1642. We're the oldest county on the eastern side of the Chesapeake Bay. Given our land grant in 1638, Kent County became the Kent County, Maryland in 1642. The only other older county in the state of Maryland is St. Mary's City, St. Mary's County. And I would like to see that remain valued highly, whether it's Whitehall across the street or whether it's the Wicks house that we're sitting in the yard or or the Historical Society, or the Imperial Hotel. There are so many beautiful, beautiful, beautiful properties here that we get to enjoy. We have one of 3 custom houses from the original 13 colonies sitting in Little Chestertown, Maryland. What a resource. And we can do it properly, and we can do it with a proper balance. There's no doubt in my mind. We've got interested commissioners that are doing a good job. Very difficult job to be a county commissioner. You asked me about running for the clerk of court. So during my high school years, my senior year of high school, the People's Bank was looking for a trainee. Mr. Roy Owens was my first boss, and I applied for the job. Of course, my concern was I was drum major of the high school band. It was my senior year. Mr. Owens said, "Don't worry about it. We'll bring you in on Friday nights and start teaching you. When you graduate, you'll have a job in June." And this was December of '75. So I started working for the People's Bank, stayed with them, graduated, went to work full-time with them in June, worked for them for 9 years, went on to help with the development and the reopening of the bankrupt Queen Anne Bowling Center, got it up and running for 18 months, and Second National Bank came after me, and I worked for them for 5 years, and I told them in the beginning, I will come to work for you and I will help establish your branch, but you have to be supportive, because I knew from my early days at People's Bank in '76, '7, '8, '9 that I was being called to public service. And Mr. Pender, who was the previous clerk of court prior to me, was the chairman of the board of People's Bank, board of directors. And back in that day, you used to, as a loan officer, take a board of director with you to look at this house that's asking for a mortgage, the family that wants to buy this house. And that board of director and you reviewed the property to see if it was worth the note, to evaluate the note, the request for the mortgage. And I told Mr. Pender early on that someday I planned to run for clerk of court, because it was the best political job that you could get elected to, where you did not make policy, you enforced the annotated code. And I waited for several terms for Mr. Pender to decide whether he was going to retire or keep doing it. And in late '89, I got a phone call from Judge Boyer, Elroy Boyer Sr., who told me to get myself geared up and prepare my campaign, because Judge Raisin had retired, Florence Sutton, the court reporter, had retired, and that Mr. Pender had told him that he was considering retirement. So I went ahead and got my campaign geared up and got started to run a successful election in '90, and here we are 30 years later. But I'm very pleased with the success we've had at the office, the support that I've been given. I'm very pleased that my successor was willing to take on the responsibility and run for the job in 2.5 years. And I sincerely hope that the citizens of Kent County will do their homework and see that if you like the service that I've been able to provide for 30 years, this is the person to continue it. And then there's another staff member behind her that's well-trained and well-versed to succeed her. I've tried to set it up for the future for the citizens of Kent County so that the clerk's office is managed the way that they wanted it managed. Obviously, they wanted it managed. They kept me in office for 8 terms. So they wanted it managed the way I've done it, and I think that they're pleased with my service, thus the accolades that I've received. You don't do it for accolades. I did it because it was my responsibility to serve.